What are your thoughts on looting as a method of hastening change?
I'm mainly against it. Um,
Are you ever for it?
no, not that I can think of. You're referring, I assume, among other things, to the book that's just been published in America in defense of looting.
2016 that came out, you know.
Did it really? Gosh, that was a
Which is
prophetic book.
really, really interesting. So
Yeah. It's had its moment now, that book, hasn't it?
She is so much more insightful than you. Her ability to see what's going on in the future is that much greater than yours.
Yeah.
So Vicky Osterweil, for anyone who doesn't know what it is, I've got a little breakdown here, and then I'll get your opinions on it. So NPR summarizes the book as an argument that, quote, looting is a powerful tool to bring about real lasting change in society, end quote. Osterweil's argument is simple. The so-called United States was founded in, quote, cis heteropatriarchal racial capitalist violence. That violence produced our current system, particularly its property relations, and looting is a remedy for that sickness. Looting rejects the legitimacy of ownership rights and property, the moral injunction to work for a living, and the justice of law and order. Ownership of things, not just people, is innately, structurally white supremacist. Looting is good, she says, because it exposes a deep truth about the great American confidence game, which is that, without police and without state oppression, we can have things for free. She came to this conclusion 6 years ago, and in her book, which is written in love and solidarity with looters the world over.
Well, the obvious question is, where does she live? Anything you need to know?
Do you know that at the front of the book, they have the classic, this is copyrighted by whatever publishing.
I know because a colleague of mine at The Spectator wrote to her publishers the other day saying, we are publishing our own edition of this.
Looting her book.
You were just looting her book. And the publishers didn't seem to be up for that. You'd be amazed to hear. I mean, I just said, look, if you see it in the bookshop, take it. It's yours. All property is theft. Why not? Turns out, actually, nobody wants to steal her book. Certainly not if it's filled with stuff like you just read. These people, I mean, they're so reprehensible on so many levels. I mean, first of all, by the way, how ignorant can somebody be? I mean, how ignorant do you have to be to make that claim about the foundation of American society? And I suspect, like a number of authors of the American far left, she's never been anywhere else in the world in her life. I strongly suspect that. If she can send me photos of herself in sub-Saharan Africa, North Africa, across a lot of the Middle East and the Far East and things, I could be persuaded. But I would suspect that she's been brought up in America, hasn't traveled very much further, and has simply been indoctrinated in this now completely boring and predictable way where all you need to do is throw out this same word salad about heteronormativity and indigenous people and all this sort of thing. And before you know it, you've got a not very well selling book that you can't even get stolen. But
That's like, do you remember the Sargon of Akkad thing that he got really, really in trouble for, where he said, I wouldn't even rape you? That was his thing to the politician. I can't remember the lady's name, and that was what got him in trouble. This is a book so bad you wouldn't even steal it. Is that
can't be stolen? It can't be stolen. I mean, if anyone can show me an example of it being stolen, but it's also, I mean, it's amazing we're in this era and that people are talking and thinking like this. I simply think she is a product of capitalism at this particular stage where she doesn't know very much. She hasn't been very far in the world. She's not been educated well. She's not seen anything of the world. She doesn't know anything about life. She doesn't know how life is normally run. And all of that is playing out on the streets of various American cities at the moment, primarily Portland, Oregon. But there are a lot of people in this strange position. I have a lot of friends in America who tell me that this is very common, this sort of thing among their children and grandchildren. They say that they genuinely think, like this woman, that their country is uniquely bad. And these people just don't know anything. They just don't know anything. They don't know anything about history. They don't know anything about geography. They don't know anything about the world. And I'm very uninterested in the thoughts of these intensely parochial so-called internationalists, because that's what they are. I mean, they have never seen the consequences of their own thought. the idea that you take away the police and everything will be, was it free? I think she said. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you also will get a massive upsurge in rape, murder.
Disproportionately in minority communities as well.
Yeah. And then what are you going to blame it on? Maybe the period when we still had police and there's a lingering overness that makes people do that for a time. I mean, this is juvenile thinking. This is not juvenile. This is wicked and juvenile thinking. Again, I don't think very many people believe it. And I think that there is an argument, it's a bleak argument, that people like her simply have to see this tested close up at some point.
Did we not see this with Chaz Chop? Was that not a perfect microcosm for this? That you could have idiocy masquerading as moral virtue within a few.
There are certain very, very pertinent. Chad was a very good example of it. There are lots of individuals who demonstrate it. Do you remember that big story? I think it was in the New York Times when it was still a newspaper. Where there was a description of a couple, an American couple, again, something like Oregon, No, that could be another couple. This couple didn't have guns, as far as I know. In fact, they were very anti-gun. They were very pro-peace, though, and they feared that the world was lacking in love, and they just needed to give a bit more love to the world. You can see how this ends already, can't you? They decided to go on a cycling holiday and sort of spread something or other. And then they ended up just getting killed by a jihadi cell in like Tajikistan. And they did a blog of their stops in various places in the Far East and the Near East, the cycling, I think on a tandem even. And then they just, one day they just, it's all the stuff is like, we just, think the world just needs more love and more tandem holidays.
So they've got rose petals. They've got a basket of rose petals in front.
This couple of guys, couple of jihadis saw them one day and just on the fluke, so they couldn't believe their luck clearly, and just took them out. So human naivety is very familiar, and one has to be careful not to laugh too much at the people who express it. But it's a very common thing to be totally naive about the nature of the world. Ordinarily, you get over it when you're very young. Unfortunately, in America in particular, we have a generation of juveniles who are growing up and still juvenile, and who actually believe these things, who actually believe that, life is really quite straightforward. If you just don't have the police and you just like defund the police and you don't have the patriarchal cis heteronormative state, then what? I mean, by the way, did you see somebody did a video the other day from Portland, Oregon, of one of these parks where they've really done their best, the protesters, and it really does look like the apocalyptic wasteland they deserved, just covered in piss and just people just lying zonked out on whatever illegal or legal drugs they've been able to get, and everyone just looks like they've pissed themselves and they've taken. Is
everyone wearing a trench coat? That's what I imagine. Lots of trench coats.
They're all wearing someone else's trench coat. And they've got all the statues are down. Of course, the whole place is covered in plinths. Beautiful plinths everywhere. And all the plinths are covered in BLM graffiti and fuck the state and police are this. And that's what these people inherit, and they deserve to inherit it. A urine-stenched, graffitied wasteland in which just zombies lie around until they die.
I really want to just put that as the trailer. That's just going to be the episode.
This is what they deserve. This is what they deserve. This is the final end point of their stuff. I can't believe that there are actually adults talking about this sort of stuff, and the New York Times and the NPR and things taking these discussions seriously. We've done the experiment many times before in human history of what happens when you have a total breakdown of law and order, and it always comes out looking exactly like Portland.